Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new revenge content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, My Mother Ruins an Anti-Vaxxer Karen and Her Cronies. Background. The subject of this story is my mother. For the sake of this story, I'll call her Amber. She's in her late 70s and works for a women's clothing store which caters specifically to older clientele. She's been working for this particular company for some 20 years now. The manager of the store is the absolute epitome of a Karen, so let's call her Karen. Extremely entitled, short-haired, chubby, cheats on her husband and a blatant backstabber. Because the store is staffed by mostly older women, cliques tend to form. It's basically high school. And naturally Karen has her own cronies. During periods where no one is in the store, there also tends to be a ton of gossip, important for later. The assistant manager, let's call her Jackie, is also one of Karen's lackeys and she has her head way up Karen's ass. If Karen does something then Jackie isn't far behind, etc. Amber is a bit of a ball buster and she has zero tolerance for garbage in her personal life. Over the years she has tried to stay impartial when it comes to her work, however, because to her it's all about professionalism. It also helps that she has been the top seller for her district for some 10 years running despite working part-time. Karen and Jackie absolutely hate her for it. So much so that Karen routinely schedules her for hours which are not especially good. Despite this though, Amber still has her loyal clientele and she always comes out on top against the other sales associates in total sales every quarter. As expected, this naturally feeds the horrible feedback loop with Karen and Jackie. When COVID hit, the company decided to cut all commission for sales associates. The commission was one of the main reasons why Amber endured Karen and Jackie's bullshit. While she only made slightly above the state's minimum wage, with the commission, she could double or even triple that amount on good days. According to her, no other retailer in the area offers this kind of system and it's pretty unlikely that the company will reinstate it even after COVID ends. Along with the cut in wages, the store was also forced to decrease the amount of hours that they could offer to their associates. Karen took this as a way to essentially bar Amber from working at the store. While other associates were getting 8 to 10 hours a week, Amber would see maybe 6 if she was lucky, and they would be during times of low customer traffic. Karen could get away with this because the district manager is also in her pocket. Along with the reduced hours and the removal of commissions, the store naturally had a mandatory mask policy for all employees and customers. Karen and her lackeys would often bitch and moan about how unnecessary this was because according to them, COVID is a hoax, and wearing masks makes you subservient to the government. There were a few incidents where Karen would let people without masks into the store despite the state and company mandates. Amber refused to rock the boat, however, so when this would happen, she would go into the back of the store and stay as far away from these people as possible. During this period in time, a friend of the family and good friend of Amber's passed away due to complications from COVID. The funeral was set for a time when Amber was scheduled to work, so she called out that day. Karen and Jackie attacked Amber and the deceased, claiming that she must have caught the flu or been in bad health, and that Amber was feeding into the lie. Oh, how nice it must be to live such a privileged life. Not long after, a few of store's loyal clients also passed away from COVID, and still Karen and Jackie, along with their groupies, maintained their narrative in the most vindictive way possible. Every time someone died, it must have been because of bad life choices or bad health. Never was it attributed to the global pandemic that was claiming thousands of people a day, according to Karen and her groupies. And always when Amber decided to go to the services, she would hear snide remarks regarding how she was supporting a hoax. I guess sympathy is not really a thing for these people. Some of these customers were regulars who had been coming to that particular store for years, and still none of the groupies would relent on these points. Recently the COVID restrictions have started to lift and many of the clientele and employees have gotten their vaccines. This includes submitting paperwork to show that you have indeed obtained a vaccine or a note from a doctor explaining why you couldn't have one. Not Karen nor Jackie though. To them, getting the vaccine would be like pumping poison into their veins. Instead, they decided to photocopy a version of a legitimate vaccine card and fill in their information, effectively forging the documents. Amber, however, has suggested multiple times that they just get the vaccines because it is something that is mandated by the company. All employees must get vaccines when they are available, and given that almost all of the employees are above the age of 60, they have been eligible for the shots for months now. Recently, Amber had an emotional conversation directly with Karen where she expressed her concern for her. "I just want you and your family to be safe, so please get the vaccine." Karen responded with her normal snide attitude, of course. A few days later, however, Karen sent a text message mentioning that she had finally got the vaccine. She didn't. Amber replied that it was great and that she was happy for her. Karen just replied with a gif of some guy throwing up the middle finger. This was the beginning of the end for Amber. The incident. During one of her shifts, Amber overheard Karen and Jackie discussing how Amber was a moron and a sheep who bought the story about how Karen had taken the vaccine. During that same shift, Amber was working with a customer in the back and some woman came into the store and stole a couple items of clothing, probably totaling out to be $100 at most. Now it's company policy that during all shifts, there always be at least 2 employees in the store, and during this particular stretch of time, Jackie was the only other person in the store. According to the video cameras, Jackie was up in the front of the store playing with her phone when this woman came in. Normally, if someone steals items from the store, the protocol is to avoid confronting them and instead just call security after they've left the store. This is mainly to avoid lawsuits and to protect the employees should these people choose to get violent. It has happened in the past. That evening, Amber received a call from Karen telling her that she was on probation pending an investigation for allowing this woman to steal from the store. Given the company's policy regarding theft, this really made no sense. It was at this point that Amber truly decided she had had enough. Eventually this probation led to Amber's dismissal, and the official reasoning was fairly vague. The revenge. One thing that I forgot to mention, a few years ago, Amber asked me to teach her how to record things on her phone, and luckily we live in a single consent state. As such, Amber had recordings of these women backstabbing her and gossiping about rather scandalous things dating back for years. She had gathered quite the collection because, you never know when you need to cover your own butt. Over the years Amber has gone to HR to no real avail, even with her recordings. Whether it be because they are also in the pocket of Karen or that they just don't care, remains to be seen. The HR department works directly under the district manager. Amber is also very good at keeping any paperwork and proof of these visits, including some recordings. She also recorded the call where she was fired. Amber has a ton of very loyal clients who were pretty distraught when they learned of her dismissal. One client in particular runs a column at one of the major newspapers for the nearby city. We will call her Casey. Since Amber was a part-time worker, she didn't really have much of a leg to stand on legally when it came to claiming a wrongful dismissal claim by legal means. However, that didn't mean that she didn't have any kind of recourse. She decided to attack the problem from multiple fronts. Amber compiled some of the greatest hits from her recording collection and had me email them off to the corporate offices of the company. Specifically, the CEO, CTO, and basically every member of the board of directors. I fired a couple bursts off to anyone who had any power that I could find. Along with those recordings, she wrote an email about how Karen, Jackie and their group of sheep all refused to get vaccines and had falsified their vaccine documents to pass the company standards. Casey then put Amber in touch with a columnist for the newspaper and they got copies of the recordings, the text messages and the dismissal phone call. They also did an interview which was for an article and a TV slot on the local news. Amber discussed the commission cuts, clear favoritism, lack of any intervention by HR, forged documents, company policy, the incident, etc. Basically anything relevant to paint these women in a terrible light. Among some of these recordings were bits of gossip that included conversations regarding Karen's various boyfriends over the years. She was married, and Amber also wrote an anonymous email to the husband that included some of these recordings. The fallout. Shit hit the fan pretty fast, as you can probably imagine. Karen, Jackie, the district manager, and a couple of the groupies were immediately fired and put under investigation for forging documents. While forging a vaccine card isn't really something too serious, it could lead to some pretty hefty fines. There is no specific law against forging the vaccine white cards, however, because the white cards contain the government seal. Well, you can just imagine how illegal that might be. Let's just say the FBI has stepped in on this one. One of the recordings featured Karen admitting to forging the cards. After the article and TV slot ran on the local news, the CEO reached out to Amber to formally apologize for the behavior of HR, the district manager, Karen, and Jackie. She even went so far as to offer Amber a raise, but Amber declined because she found a job that actually paid a fair wage and let her work on her own time. The real bitch of it for the CEO and the board was the fact that their employees were breaking the company policy for a store that exclusively catered to older women regarding a virus that tends to kill older people. They caught some heavy public backlash for this. Karen's husband seems to have separated from her after finding out about her infidelity. Whether or not this will lead to a divorce remains to be seen. The best part for Amber, many of her clients started coming to her new store, and again she's kicking ass as one of the best sales associates. Next one is titled, Absolutely Mr. Neighbor. I have a neighbor who is a bit of a troublemaker. A bit of a backstory. He has 4 cars and often parks them all on the street, completely filling the street in front of his and my house. When he isn't working on his car, with air wrenches, or washing them, he is probably idling his tow truck. Oh yeah, he has a tow truck too, just rumbling away outside of my house. People are constantly coming and going from his house, likely for illicit reasons, but no way to prove that. There was a period where the police were at his house multiple times a week about 2 years ago, but that has subsided to once every couple months. He lives with his grandmother, who is immobile, and you no longer see her anymore except when the ambulance comes and takes her to the hospital, alone. Last week when I was walking out of my house to take my son to daycare, he came stomping across the street and started to be all buddy-buddy with me, so I immediately knew something was up. He asked if we can keep my dog, a German Shepherd, inside in the morning until 7 a.m. because he is tired of her waking him up. She is a shepherd, she barks, we limit it as best we can, but a dog is going to dog. I say sure, and continue buckling in my kid. He then continues on and says to not take pictures of him or his house. I point to the camera overhead, which is oriented in a way to see my front door, driveway, and his house. I put it up to keep an eye on him and my property since he has a hot head and I don't trust him to not do something stupid. Then to take the cake, he told me to stop following his wife, and explained that she said I followed her home multiple times. I explained to him that I lived across the street, from time to time we will both be coming home at the same time, and that I have better things to do than park a mile away from home to follow her home. So, for the malicious compliance, it comes back to keeping my dog inside until 7 a.m. so he can get his much-needed beauty sleep. Now, instead of leaving her dog door unlocked at night, and her going out in the morning when she wakes up, usually around when we wake up at 6:30 a.m., we lock it at night and unlock it on the nose at 7 a.m. But, at 7 a.m. when I let her out, I tell her to speak for about 5 minutes. More often than not she'd go out in the morning, pee, and come back in with no one any the wiser. Not anymore, now she goes out and barks up a storm for a few minutes. Last one is titled, Bully My Brother? Guess you won't know who blew up the toilet. This is not my story, but from my educational advisor, one of the legit funniest people I have ever met. The other day we were talking about our school times and the differences between being educators and students, when she started telling this story. She used to be the model student, getting along with all the teachers and getting the best grades in her classroom, but there was that one teacher she could not get along with. It was her chemistry teacher, and she described her as, all teachers have that breaking point where they just start screaming, but hers was incredibly easy to find. Until the point of the start of the story, she was just an unliked teacher and someone my advisor just dealt with. But one day, she reached her breaking point when her brother told me this teacher, which I'm gonna be calling her rude teacher, was calling him stupid and screaming at him for not knowing an answer she hadn't even explained properly yet. That was when she got involved in a plan, the famous toilet bomb. Because of the shared gender with the teacher, she knew where and when rude teacher would use the restroom. She had a strange routine with the exact time and stall she used to use, and because she is a model student, she could come and go without being even noticed, since no one would assume she was up to no good. Thing is, the whole class was in on it. Before she got involved with the plan though, there was a single condition: no one would rat or blame someone else. No one was supposed to talk anything. She had a plan. And to the toilet the bomb went. My advisor went to the stall, installed the toilet bomb and went back to class at the exact time rude teacher had her restroom break. When she came back from doing the deed, she sits down at her desk and hears the explosion, followed by rude teacher screaming bloody murder and coming back to class to scream at them. The only classroom that was on break for teacher transition was my advisor's class, so rude teacher beelined straight to them and started demanding to know who did this. Of course, radio silence. She jumped in anger like a toddler, made all threats she could legally do and made the biggest tantrum you could imagine, while being absolutely soaked in toilet water. Radio silence. The next logical step for rude teacher was to call the principal that arrived at class with a box filled with pieces of paper. She explained that everyone was to write the name of someone involved in the toilet bomb and put there to be taken and read by her by the end of class. That was when my advisor stepped in. The second the principal was out of the class, she told everyone to just write, "It was me," in capital letters and put the paper back in the box. Which everyone did. When the principal came back and started looking at the papers, in front of the class, she slowly turned from a normal color to a deep, fiery red and started throwing her own tantrum. Guess they found out her breaking point, and did the only thing she could do at that point. She suspended the whole goddamn class for 3 days. In the end, my advisor did everything. Blew up the toilet, lead the class to not snitch on anyone and earned 3 days at home without no one suspecting anything. Edit. This did not happen in the US and it was almost 40 years ago. My counselor was 14 and now she is 52 years old, so I would appreciate if you guys understand that older stories are not as clear and detailed as recent ones, as I understand if it sounds unbelievable. Since it's not my story and I laughed a whole lot when my counselor told me, I thought it would be nice to share with y'all. Thanks for listening.